This is the most exciting night in the years that I've known Johnny Carson, and he started me on this show.
Frank Sinatra was more than a voice. He was an era, a man who filled rooms without trying. From sold-out stages to quiet family moments, his life was always watched, but never fully understood. Behind the fame, there were marriages, heartbreak, pride, and a son who lived in his shadow. Frank Sinatra Jr. grew up with a famous last name and a complicated bond with his father. For years, he stayed mostly quiet, but revealed a few things about his famous father. One statement changes how we see Sinatra not as a legend, but as a dad. Join us as we look back at Frank Sinatra's life, his family, and the words his son finally shared, and what they truly reveal. Frank Sinatra, the boy before the legend. Frank Sinatra did not enter the world quietly. He was born on December 12, 1915, in a small tenement apartment at 415 Monroe Street in Hoboken, New Jersey. He was the only child of Italian immigrants. His mother, Natalina Dolly Garaventa, came from Genoa. His father, Antonino Martino Marty Sinatra, was from Sicily. From the start, his birth was difficult. Sinatra was a large baby, weighing over 13 pounds, and doctors had to use forceps to deliver him. That caused serious damage. His left cheek, neck, and ear were badly scarred. His eardrum was damaged for life. At one point, things were so serious that his grandmother had to revive him by holding him under cold water until he gasped. Because of his injuries, his baptism was delayed for months. Even as a child, his body carried marks that never faded. As he grew older, surgery left more scars on his neck, and later, severe acne added to them. These were things he could never hide. But instead of breaking him, they became part of his presence. He was raised Catholic, and faith was part of daily life in his home. Yet the biggest influence in his childhood was not religion. It was his mother. Nancy Sinatra later said of Dolly, "They'd fought through his childhood and continued to do so until her dying day. But I believe that to counter her steel, he'd developed his own." Their friction first had shaped him. That tension, she believed, stayed with him forever, and it pushed him to prove people wrong. That need would quietly shape everything that came next. Dolly Sinatra and the fire that shaped him. Dolly Sinatra was not a quiet woman. She was strong, driven, and deeply involved in her community. Biographers often describe her as the main force behind Frank's confidence and personality. She expected toughness. Sinatra's fourth wife, Barbara, later claimed Dolly knocked him around a lot as a child. Whether emotional or physical, her presence was powerful. Dolly worked as a midwife and became well known in Hoboken. She was active in local Democratic Party circles and had influence far beyond her home. Some biographers even say she secretly ran illegal abortion services for Italian Catholic girls, earning the nickname Hat Pin Dolly. She also spoke several languages and often worked as a translator in the neighborhood. In contrast, Frank's father Marty was quiet and illiterate. He had been a bantamweight boxer before joining the Hoboken Fire Department, where he slowly worked his way up to captain. Marty believed deeply in education, even though he could not read himself. He wanted Frank to become a civil engineer and attend Stevens Institute of Technology. Frank spent much of his time at his parents' tavern, doing homework and sometimes singing for spare change. During the Great Depression, Dolly made sure her son had money to go out with friends and buy nice clothes. Neighbors later called him the best-dressed kid in the neighborhood. He was thin, small, and often joked about later on stage. But behind the jokes was a boy learning how to stand out. Music slowly became his escape, and as his confidence grew, the pull toward that world became impossible to ignore. School trouble, music dreams, and finding his voice. From an early age, Sinatra was drawn to music. Big band jazz caught his attention first. He listened closely to singers like Gene Austin, Rudy Vallee, Russ Columbo, and Bob Eberly. But one voice stood above the rest. Bing Crosby became his idol. For his 15th birthday, his uncle Domenico gave him a ukulele. Sinatra began playing and singing at family gatherings. School, however, was a struggle. He attended David E. Rood Jr. High School, then A.J. Demarest High School in Hoboken. He even arranged bands for school dances, but discipline was not his strength. After attending only 47 days, he was expelled for general rowdiness. To please his mother, he enrolled in Drake Business School. He left after 11 months. Jobs followed. He worked as a delivery boy for a local newspaper, then as a riveter at a shipyard. At the same time, he sang wherever he could. Social clubs, small radio stations, any place that would let him stand in front of a microphone. Sometimes he sang just for food, sometimes for cigarettes. He knew his voice had something special, but he also knew it needed work. To improve his speech, he paid $1 a lesson to vocal coach John Quinlan. Quinlan was one of the first people to notice Sinatra's wide vocal range. Sinatra never learned to read music. He learned by listening, by feeling, and slowly, those long nights singing for nothing began to point him towards something bigger. The Hoboken Four and the first taste of fame. In 1935, everything changed. Sinatra's mother convinced a local singing group called the Three Flashes to let her son join. At first, they were not interested. One member later admitted they only agreed because Sinatra owned a car and could drive them around. But once he began singing, things shifted quickly. With Sinatra, the group became the Hoboken Four. They auditioned for Major Bose's Amateur Hour, a hugely popular radio show. Sinatra begged to be included. They passed the audition. Each member earned $12.50, and the group won first prize after receiving 40,000 votes. The reward was a 6-month contract performing across the country on stage and radio. Sinatra quickly became the lead singer. He drew the attention, especially from female fans. This caused jealousy within the group, but it also revealed something important. Sinatra was no longer just part of a group. He was the center of it. Bose continued inviting them back under different names, sometimes changing their identity completely. Whether real or exaggerated through Sinatra's later stage humor, the message was clear. Doors were opening, and Sinatra was walking through them fast. What began as a favor because he owned a car had turned into the first step toward a career that would soon leave Hoboken behind. And with that growing fame came a new distance between the boy shaped by his mother's steel will and the man he was becoming. The break that finally felt real. By 1938, Frank Sinatra was still chasing stability. He found steady work as a singing waiter at a roadhouse called the Rustic Cabin in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. The pay was low, just $15 a week, but the place was connected to New York's WNEW radio station. That mattered. Sinatra began performing live on the Dance Parade radio show, singing with a group while people listened at home. Even with the small paycheck, he believed this was his moment. He told friends he was going to become so big that no one could ever touch him. In March 1939, saxophone player Frank Main helped Sinatra land an audition to record Our Love. It became his first solo studio recording. A few months later, band leader Harry James heard Sinatra sing on Dance Parade and signed him to a 2-year contract at $75 a week. Sinatra joined James after a show at the Paramount Theater in New York. That summer, Sinatra released his first commercial record, From the Bottom of My Heart. It sold poorly, and later releases like All or Nothing at All also struggled at first. But something important was happening. Sinatra's vocal training allowed him to sing higher than before. His control improved. His song list grew. The confidence was there, even if the fame had not caught up yet. and that gap between belief and reality started to wear on him. Walking away to move forward. As time passed, Sinatra grew frustrated with the Harry James Band. He wanted more attention, more recognition, more success. His close friend and pianist, Hank Sanacola, encouraged him to stay, but Sinatra felt stuck. In November 1939, he made a bold move. He left Harry James to become the lead singer for the Tommy Dorsey Band, replacing Jack Leonard. The pay jumped to $125 a week. Harry James agreed to release him from the contract. Sinatra made his first public appearance with Dorsey on January 26, 1940, at the Coronado Theater in Illinois. He opened with Stardust. Tommy Dorsey later recalled the moment clearly, saying, "You could almost feel the excitement coming up out of the crowds when the kids stood up to sing." Dorsey remembered Sinatra as just a skinny kid with big ears, but the reaction was undeniable. Dorsey became more than a band leader to Sinatra. He became a father figure. Sinatra copied his habits, his discipline, and his demand for perfection. He even took up Dorsey's hobby of collecting toy trains. Sinatra respected him deeply and once said, "The only two people I've ever been afraid of are my mother and Tommy Dorsey." Yet even inside this success, tension existed. Professional jealousy surfaced, especially with drummer Buddy Rich. Some called them rivals. Others said they were friends and even roommates. What is clear is that Sinatra later helped Rich financially, including a large loan when Rich needed it most. The band shaped Sinatra's discipline, but it also reminded him that he still wanted something more. From band singer to cultural phenomenon. After years of building momentum, Sinatra finally stepped into full solo success. He became a star after signing with Columbia Records, where his voice found a wider audience. Teenage fans known as Bobby Soxers idolized him. In 1946, he released his debut album, The Voice of Frank Sinatra. It marked a turning point. His career continued to rise when he later signed with Capitol Records. There, he released albums arranged by Nelson Riddle, including In the Wee Small Hours and Songs for Swingin' Lovers. In 1960, Sinatra made another bold decision. He left Capitol and started his own label, Reprise Records. This gave him control. It led to major collaborations, including work with Count Basie and recordings like Sinatra Basie. An historic musical first, and it might as well be swing. In 1965, Sinatra released September of My Years and starred in the Emmy-winning television special Frank Sinatra, A Man and His Music. A year later came Sinatra at the Sands, followed by a famous collaboration with Tom Jobim. More projects followed, including work with Duke Ellington. In 1971, Sinatra announced his retirement after releasing My Way. But retirement did not last. 2 years later, he returned. In 1980, he released New York, New York. By this point, Sinatra had sold an estimated 150 million records worldwide. But music was only part of the story he was still writing. Awards, acting, and a lasting legacy. Alongside music, Sinatra built a powerful acting career. He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for From Here to Eternity. He starred in films like The Man with the Golden Arm and The Manchurian Candidate. He appeared in musicals including On the Town, Guys and Dolls, High Society, and Pal Joey, which earned him a Golden Globe. Later in his career, he often played detectives in films like Tony Rome and The Detective. He also directed the anti-war film None But the Brave. On television, The Frank Sinatra Show premiered on CBS in 1950, and he remained a regular presence on TV for decades. Honors followed. He received the Golden Globe Cecil B. DeMille Award, the Kennedy Center Honors, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Congressional Gold Medal. Sinatra earned 11 Grammy Awards, including lifetime honors. Music critic Robert Christgau later called him the greatest singer of the 20th century. By the end, Sinatra was no longer just a performer. He was a symbol, a voice tied to decades of change. And yet, behind all the awards and praise, there were still personal stories left to explore. Stories that did not live on stage. Stories tied to family. And most of all, to a son who would one day speak about the man behind the legend. Frank Sinatra's Marriages and a Life Under Constant Watch. You see, Frank Sinatra's personal life was never private for long. He married Nancy Barbato in 1939 after meeting her in the summer of 1934 in Long Branch, New Jersey, where he was working as a lifeguard. Their marriage lasted until 1951, and together they had 3 children. Their first child, Nancy, was born in 1940. Their son, Frank Sinatra Jr., was born in 1944. Their youngest daughter, Tina, was born in 1948. During these years, Sinatra was building fame fast, and that success came with distance. He was often away, traveling for shows and film work. During the marriage, he had many affairs, and gossip magazines followed every rumor closely. Stories about his relationships with women like Marilyn Maxwell, Lana Turner, and Joy Lansing were printed openly, turning his private choices into public talk. After his divorce from Nancy, Sinatra married actress Ava Gardner in 1951. Their relationship was passionate but unstable. Arguments and fights became public knowledge, and the pressure of fame only made things worse. In 1953, they announced their separation through MGM. Ava Gardner filed for divorce in 1954 while dating matador Luis Miguel Dominguín, but the divorce was not finalized until 1957. Despite everything, Sinatra never stopped caring for her. They stayed close friends for the rest of their lives. After that marriage ended, Sinatra moved to a home in Rancho Mirage, California, known as the Compound. His romantic life continued to draw attention. He broke off engagements with Lauren Bacall and Juliette Prowse. He was linked to Marilyn Monroe, Pat Sheehan, Vicki Dugan, and Kip Hamilton. In 1966, Sinatra married Mia Farrow. They divorced 2 years later, but remained close. Years later, Farrow suggested Sinatra might be the father of her son, Ronan. Sinatra's daughter, Nancy, strongly rejected that claim, calling it nonsense, explaining that her father had undergone a vasectomy years earlier. In 1976, Sinatra married Barbara Marx at Sunnylands in Rancho Mirage. She remained his wife until his death. While marriages came and went, the spotlight never faded. And behind all of this, his role as a father was growing more complicated. Friendships, faith, and the quiet side few saw. Away from headlines, Sinatra kept a close circle of trusted friends. These included Jilly Rizzo, songwriter Jimmy Van Heusen, golfer Ken Venturi, comedian Don Rickles, comedian Pat Henry, baseball manager Leo Durocher, and President John F. Kennedy. Sinatra even helped organize Kennedy's inaugural ball, showing how deeply their friendship ran at the time. When he was not performing, Sinatra enjoyed simple routines. He listened to classical music in his spare time. He swam daily in the Pacific Ocean. He played golf often with Ken Venturi in Palm Springs, where he lived in a home called Twin Palms that he had commissioned years earlier. Sinatra also liked painting, reading, and building model railways. These hobbies gave him control and calm, something his public life rarely allowed. His relationship with faith was complex. Sinatra often criticized the church and, earlier in life, held a broad and philosophical view of God, closer to science than religion. That outlook shifted later. In 1976, he was inducted into the Catholic Sovereign Military Order of Malta. The turning point came after tragedy. In 1977, his mother died in a plane crash. After her death, Sinatra turned back to Catholicism, seeking healing. He died as a practicing Catholic and was given a Catholic burial. These moments reveal a man who, beneath fame and confidence, searched for grounding. That search also played out in his relationship with his children, and none felt it more strongly than his son. Frank Sinatra Jr. and the night that defined his life. Frank Sinatra Jr., born Francis Wayne. Sinatra, on January 10, 1944, entered the world as the son of one of the most famous singers alive. Though commonly called a junior, he technically was not one, since his father's middle name was Albert. Still, the name followed him everywhere. Growing up, Frank Jr. rarely saw his father. Sinatra was almost always on the road, performing or acting in films. From a young age, Frank Jr. wanted to be more than just a singer. He dreamed of becoming a pianist and songwriter. That desire set him apart from the expectations placed on him. On December 8, 1963, his life took a terrifying turn. At 19 years old, Frank Jr. was kidnapped from his hotel room at Harrah's Lake Tahoe, room 417. The kidnappers demanded a ransom of $240,000. Sinatra immediately offered $1 million, but the kidnappers strangely refused the higher amount. Frank Jr. was released 2 days later after the ransom was paid. The men responsible were arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. They received long sentences, but served only small portions. The mastermind, Barry Keenan, was later ruled legally insane at the time of the crime. During the kidnapping, the kidnappers insisted that all communication be done through payphones. During these calls, Sinatra became worried that he might run out of coins. That fear stayed with him for life. From that moment on, he carried 10 dimes with him at all times. He was even buried with 10 dimes in his pocket. At the time of the kidnapping, Sinatra was filming Robin and the Seven Hoods with the Rat Pack. The stress of his son's kidnapping, combined with the recent assassination of his close friend John F. Kennedy, pushed him close to shutting the film down. In the end, production continued, but the impact never left either father or son. That moment changed how Frank Jr. saw the world, and it reshaped how he understood the man everyone else called a legend. Learning the craft the hard way. Frank Sinatra Jr. did not wait for fame to come to him. He started early. By his early teens, he was already performing at local clubs. Music was not just something around him. It was something he chased. At 19, he became the vocalist for Sam Donahue's band. Around the same time, he spent a great deal of time with Duke Ellington. He did not just listen to the music, he watched how the business worked, how musicians spoke to each other, how shows were run. These lessons stayed with him. Much of his early career was spent on the road. He traveled constantly. By 1968, he had already performed in 47 states and 30 countries. He appeared on several television shows, including 2 episodes of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour with his sister Nancy. He also hosted a 10-week summer replacement series for The Dean Martin Show. He sang with his own band in Las Vegas casinos and opened shows for bigger names at other casinos. During this time, he became known for something very specific. He demanded strong rehearsals and high standards from his musicians. He wanted things done right. That reputation followed him everywhere. It showed that he was not just living off his last name. He was building something of his own. And that work ethic opened doors far beyond the stage. Acting, television, and a voice beyond music. As his career grew, Sinatra Jr. moved into acting and television. In 1966, he appeared in the Sammy Davis Jr. drama, A Man Called Adam. He later played a troubled man who takes a stewardess hostage. He also appeared as Officer Tom Boyd in 3 episodes of the television crime drama Adam 12. The final episode, titled Clinic on 18th Street, aired in March 1974 and was edited as a television pilot, though the series was not picked up. His acting work continued over the years. He appeared in Aru Haishi no Kake in 1970 alongside Dale Robertson. Much later, he acted in Codename Zebra in 1987 and Hollywood Homicide in 2003 with Harrison Ford and Josh Hartnett. His work was not limited to film and television roles. In 1976, Sinatra composed a 15-minute song and monologue titled Over the Land. It focused on the American flag and the nation's history with it since the War of 1812. The piece became important enough that it is now housed in the United States National Archives. These projects showed that he wanted his voice to be heard in different ways, not just through singing. Still, as his career expanded, another role slowly began to take priority, one tied directly to his father. Standing beside his father until the end. In 1988, Sinatra Jr. made a major decision. At his father's request, he placed his own career on hold. He stepped into the role of musical director and conductor for Frank Sinatra. Poet and vocalist Rod McEwen explained why this mattered, saying that as Sinatra Sr. outlived his conductors and arrangers and began to grow frail, his son knew he needed someone he trusted close by. McEwen said Frank Jr. also understood that performing was everything to his father and that keeping him connected to his audience helped keep him alive and vital. Even while focusing on his father, Sinatra Jr. continued to perform at times. In 1989, he sang Wedding Vows in Vegas on the Was Not Was album What Up Dog, and performed the song live on Late Night with David Letterman. In the late 1990s, he was offered the role of Vic Fontaine on Star Trek. Deep Space Nine. Though he liked the show, he turned it down, saying he only wanted to play an alien. The role later went to James Darren. Sinatra Jr. also leaned into humor and self-awareness. He guest-starred on Son of the Beach as the villain Stinkfinger, and even sang the character's theme song. He appeared as himself on The Sopranos in the episode The Happy Wanderer, allowing jokes about his father's rumored mob connections. He also appeared on Family Guy, where he was introduced as a member of the board, sang several songs, and even performed the show's theme during the credits. He returned twice more, with his final appearance airing after his death and being dedicated to his memory. His music career continued as well. In 2006, he released the album That Face, which included You'll Never Know and his own song, Spice. He made brief appearances on television, sang The Star-Spangled Banner at Yankee Stadium in 2015, and performed Theme from New York, New York at the Belmont Stakes. One of his final studio sessions came in 2015, when he appeared on Patrick Williams's album Home Sweet Home. The recording earned a Grammy nomination and is believed to be his last. His song Black Knight was later used as the theme for the film Entertainment. By the end, Frank Sinatra Jr.'s career had come full circle. Performer, actor, composer, conductor, and finally, the trusted presence beside his father when it mattered most. A late bond between father and son. When Frank Sinatra Jr. joined his father's band in 1988 as musical director and conductor, Frank Sinatra was already past his 72nd birthday. For the first time, father and son were truly working side by side. They toured together and spent long stretches of time together, something Frank Jr. said had not been possible earlier because of his father's nonstop career. Looking back on that period, Sinatra Jr. said, "I look back on that period of time now, and it's like it went by in 7 weeks. It really is amazing. Let's just say it was a learning experience. Those years mattered deeply to him. Growing up, he had known his father the same way the rest of America did, through television, movies, and recordings. Sinatra Jr. was born at the very start of his father's rise, and because Frank Sinatra was always working, that distance remained for years. Still, by the late 1950s, Sinatra Jr. had already become a skilled pianist and vocalist. He trained with Duke Ellington and played many jazz venues at a time when rock and roll was starting to take over. That shift caused problems. Sinatra Jr. once said he was fired from his RCA Victor contract because the label wanted him to become a rock star. He laughed while explaining it, saying, "I didn't understand that kind of music. And it was, to me, like putting an engine from a limousine on a motor scooter." He believed deeply in the musical education he had received since childhood and felt that something important was being lost. Later, while working on television, people noticed his quiet presence. Actress Tanya Fisher remembered how generous he was with his time, recalling that he invited her to dinner at the Pacific Dining Car, a place he used to visit with his father. He spoke openly, shared advice, and carried himself with care. Yet he could be harsh about modern music, saying that whenever he thought the quality of music had hit its lowest point, somebody comes up with something deeper down in the sewer. Behind those sharp words was a man shaped by tradition, discipline, and a long wait for a real connection with his father. Legacy, gratitude, and his final years. By the time of his 2015 interview, Frank Sinatra Jr. had beaten cancer twice and felt hopeful about his health. He even compared himself to his father, saying, "I'm in a better state of health than he was at that point." Frank Sinatra lived another 10 years after reaching that age, passing away in 1998 at 82. For Sinatra Jr., those final working years with his father meant more than fame or recognition. They meant balance. He spoke honestly about what it felt like when his father asked him to conduct. "From the time we're children, we're used to our parents providing for us," he said. "I always wanted personally to be able to say, I put something back." He explained that when his father reached out to him, he was absolutely delighted because he hoped he could finally return something meaningful so that his life would not feel like it had only been about taking. That feeling of gratitude stayed with him. In his personal life, Sinatra Jr. married Cynthia McMurray in October 1998. The marriage ended in divorce in January 2000. In 2006, he underwent surgery for prostate cancer. Despite health challenges, he continued touring and performing. On March 16, 2016, the Sinatra family released a statement saying Frank Sinatra Jr. had died unexpectedly of cardiac arrest while on tour in Daytona Beach, Florida. He was 72 years old, just months past the age his father had been when they finally grew close. His obituary acknowledged one known son. Other individuals later claimed he was their father, though they were not acknowledged by him. In the end, Frank Sinatra Jr. remained what he had always been, the son of a legend, but also a man who carried his own beliefs, his own standards, and a deep need to give something back before his time ran out. Do you think Frank Sinatra Jr. finally found peace by working alongside his father later in life? Or do you feel too much time had already been lost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.